Mesdames and messieurs, I bid you welcome. I bring you here today to solve the greatest mystery of the Victorian age. A mystery that has plagued historians and amateurs alike for 135 years. It is the fall of 1888. The age of the penny dreadful, of sensationalism, of Spring-Heeled Jack, and yes, of Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. Attend the tale of Sweeney Todd. His soul was black and his eye was odd. He served a dark and a vengeful God. Did Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. But it is not they we talk of today. Oh no, my friends, oh no. For we talk of a real penny dreadful, a real case of sensationalism, of hysteria, of the gutter press milking a story for all it is worth. The engines are screaming and the sirens are howling way down in Whitechapel tonight. There's a man in the shadows with a glint in his eye and a blade shining oh so bright. There's evil in the air, there's thunder in the sky, and a killer on the bloodshot streets. A killer, you say? One killer? A single Jack the Ripper? But what if I'm wrong? What if there's not one killer on the streets? What if it's not a man in the shadows with a glint in his eye and a blade shining oh so bright? What if, and hear me out here, my friends, what if we're not looking for a single Jack the Ripper, but Jack the Rippers? Not one man, maybe not even two. Perhaps we are looking for as many as 5 Jack the Rippers. What do we know for certain? That this is one of those instances, one of those many instances in history where fact and myth intermingle, intertwine. One of those instances which has been so over-discussed, so debated, so raked over, that the boundaries between myth and truth have been blurred. Blurred to such an extent that the truth, whatever it might have been, is now improbable to determine. The only thing we can say for certain is that in the fall of 1888 is that 5 women were murdered. The common assumption is that they were all prostitutes, street workers. But even that is dubious, doubtful. Common image of the Ripper well-dressed gentleman in a top hat guiding the lady down a dark alleyway to slit her throat. We don't know how accurate that image is. All we know for certain is that Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Long Liz Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly were murdered in the fall of 1888. There are, certainties beyond that, yes. When they were killed, for instance, how they were killed, mostly by having their throats cut, but the methods, the injuries to their bodies, the locations even, were very different. And now, 135 years on, we are highly unlikely to ever find out who killed them for certain. Not unless we get a smiling selfie taken by Jack the Ripper himself, giving a thumbs up over one of the corpses. It's not going to happen. And even if we did find definitive proof of who the Ripper was, the legend is now so high, so strong, that there would still be denials, counter-conspiracies, counter-theories. The legend would keep going. So my question is this. What if the 5 women that were murdered, Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Catherine Eddowes, Long Liz Stride, Mary Jane Kelly, what if their deaths weren't the work of a serial killer? What if their deaths were random acts of violence? Because remember, this is Whitechapel. This is a poor district. This is a district where crime is high, where violence is high, where life is tough, where death is violent death, early death is common. Not always in such an extreme case, but common. What if these are just 5 separate instances which got lumped together because of sensationalism, because of hysteria, because of the gutter press selling the story for all it was worth? What if all of these murders got lumped together as a serial killing, when in actual fact they were just 5 unconnected murders? All right there, sailor. Looking for a good time? Good evening, madam. Would you like a bit of muff, dear? A bit of jig? A beat around the bush, sir? Would you like to push me parsley? Seems you've got a lot there to push. Oh my God! You're Jack the Ripper! Yes, I am the Ripper. Excuse me? Who the devil are you? Jack the Ripper, mate. I think you will find, sir, that I am Jack the Ripper. No. I'm Jack the Ripper. Wait. What are you two both talking about? I'm Jack the Ripper. I'm Jack the Ripper and so's my wife. Let's wind back a bit and profile the case. Jack the Ripper, if he was one man, is what criminologists would refer to as a disorganised killer. And that's because the crimes are disconnected. The victims did not know each other. They had different lives. They had very little in common with each other, except for the fact that, they lived in Whitechapel. The crimes themselves, they weren't based on a pattern. They were random. The only things they really had in common were that their throats were cut. In a couple of cases, but not all, there were disembowelings. But even then, the disembowelings were different. And I'm only going by the canonical 5 victims here, because some people say there were less. Maybe either Catherine Eddowes or Long Liz Stride weren't killed by the Ripper. Personally, if we're looking for one man, I would say Mary Jane Kelly seems very odd as a victim of the Ripper. And some people reckon there were more victims as well. Martha Tabram, for instance, killed earlier in 1888. So criminologists, ripperologists, historians can't even agree on how many victims Jack the Ripper actually killed. So he's what criminologists refer to as a disorganised criminal. Such criminals are usually lower class individuals with lower levels of education, lower levels of general intelligence, which immediately rules out a doctor, which immediately rules out Prince Albert Victor, one of the common suggestions for the Ripper. These people usually have violent tendencies, they usually have substance abuse issues, they usually have some sort of personal trauma in their lives. With that in mind, it's easy to see Jack the Ripper as perhaps a soldier returned from a war, perhaps in the Sudan, where he'd seen horrible things and he was traumatized. Or maybe he was a butcher working in Spitalfields. One of the theories I like is that the organs that were removed from some of the victims were later sold in Spitalfields meat market. Returning us to Sweeney Todd, the demon barber of Fleet Street. The worst pies in London. These are just the worst pies in London town. The worst pies in London. It's not even a pie, mate. It's a fucking shortbread biscuit. Jack the Ripper's scary house. But the fact it comes across as the work of a disorganised criminal could also point to something else. It could point that we're not looking for a serial killer at all. It could indicate that we are not looking for one man, but 5, and that these are 5 disconnected crimes, which were just, at the time, by both the police and the gutter press, assumed to be the work of one man. Yes, there were similarities in the crimes, but you've got to remember, this was the sensation of the year, of the century even. This was a real-life Penny Dreadful. A real-life Sweeney Todd. The demon barber of Fleet Street. People were hyped up about this. People were engaged with this. This was pretty much one of the first tabloid don't want to use the word celebrations here, but one of the first instances where the tabloids really went to town with the story. So there were copycat killings, weren't there? Of course there were. In the UK, in the whole of the UK in 1888, there were 17 knife-related murders. In 1887 and 1889, there were just one each. So either Jack the Ripper was going on a jolly jaunt around the UK in 1888, or there were copycat killings. There were a lot of copycat killings. If it weren't for the hype, the sensationalism, the hysteria, maybe some of the canonical five, Mary Jane Kelly perhaps, Catherine Eddowes, Liz Stride, maybe they would have survived, maybe they wouldn't have been killed. But again, we'll never know. Not for certain. Which brings me on to my final point. The question, the ultimate question, the question that really underlines this case. Why did the murders stop so suddenly? Serial killers, they don't usually stop until they're caught or killed. So maybe Jack the Ripper was caught for some other crime, imprisoned maybe. Maybe nobody ever found him because of that. Maybe he fell into the Thames and drowned, maybe. Or, well, maybe it was because the hysteria died down. Maybe because people got bored of the story. Maybe because the copycat killings stopped. Maybe because there was never a serial killer in the first place. And in that sense, that kind of puts Jack the Ripper as a Victorian TikTok trend. A perverted Victorian TikTok trend, which makes this one of the most disturbing instances in the annals of crime history. So, who was Jack the Ripper? Who was the Whitechapel murderer? Leather Apron, JTR, Lewis Carroll, Francis Twomblety, Walter Sickert? We'll never know. We'll never know who killed Polly Nichols, Annie Chapman, Mary Jane Kelly, Liz Stride, Catherine Eddowes. But if you ask me, their deaths weren't the work of one man, one Jack the Ripper. They were 5 unconnected murders, which got grouped together thanks to sensationalism and hysteria. Good night. I'll steal you, the Ripper, the Ripper. Do they think that walls can hide you? Even now I'm at your window. I am in the dark beside you, buried sweetly in your yellow hair. I'll steal you, the Ripper, the Ripper, the Ripper.